Welcome to Trailhead number 5 in our third series of the Anglican tradition. In this particular session, I want to continue what I talked about a little earlier when I alluded to radical orthodoxy, which is emerging in England, and significant thinkers like John Milbank and Catherine Pickstock and others have been part of that. And George Grant, who is an acknowledged contributor to the movement of radical orthodoxy. And there can be no doubt that the radical orthodox movement has had a ripple effect in many theological circles in the larger conciliar dialogue that's going on at the present time. Radical orthodoxy is in conversation with the Orthodox, with the Anabaptists, with Roman Catholics, and in many others. And in that sense, this is a great sign of health. George Grant, as I mentioned earlier, was and remains a very significant figure within the relationship between radical orthodoxy and the Anglican Church of Canada. George Grant being probably the most preeminent Anglican theologian and philosopher and public thinker in Canada in the latter half of the 20th century. Now, what is interesting, in the last year, a significant member of radical orthodoxy, Philip Blond, has published a book called Red Toryism. Red Toryism emerges within the Canadian context, and thinkers such as, I think we could argue, Bishop John Strachan, Stephen Leacock, George Grant are but three significant Anglicans who, when attempting to understand the relationship of their faith to public witness, brought together Toryism, which is often seen on the right, and red, which is often seen and a symbol of the left. Now, the distinctive red Tory tradition in Canada is very suspicious of the emergence of large multinational corporations and the impact that they have on people, on communities, and turning much of our life into just one commodity after another. Red Toryism Canada, on the other hand, holds a very high role of the significance of the state in providing the common good for one and all through taxation and through society contributing to that process. What is significant in that the radical Orthodox through Philip Blond, when they have pilfered our indigenous use of red Toryism, have moved in a direction that is more on the right of center in this perspective. So in Philip Blond's work, he argues that red Toryism in England is both very critical of a large state, just as it is critical of large multinational corporations. And the way to deliver a renewal of culture is through significant elements of reviving community and society, in bringing together back historic communities who work and serve and live together against the Goliaths of the state and multinational corporations. Now, Canadian red Toryism, of which George Grant, Stephen Leacock, Donald Creighton, one of our great Anglican Tory historians, is a part, would argue the only resistance you can seriously have to the monolith and the growth of multinational corporations is the role of the state. And it is through the use of the state that, in fact, taxation can be done so that wealth is distributed, so that power does not accumulate in any centers, and so that citizens from coast to coast in Canada can be adequately provided for in such basics as healthcare, education, and many other areas. So there's a bit of worry as Canadians we have when radical orthodoxy, which has historically dealt more with theology, philosophy, culture, the arts, liturgy, when it moves into the direction of public witness or politics, it has taken a path in which it has distorted in many ways what red Toryism is as understood within a Canadian context and within the Anglican context in Canada. And in doing so, it has dimmed a very noble understanding of the relationship of faith to politics. I had done an earlier series on the Constantinian fall thesis and the magisterial tradition. Red Toryism finds its way somewhere in the middle between working with the state, but not being an uncritical fan of it, but very suspicious also of cynicism of the state. And it's in that middle way between working with the state for the common good of people, but not being uncritical of it, but being also very critical of anarchism, which is cynical of the state. And so radical orthodoxy, George Grant, and red Toryism, we have to understand Canada at the present time, in the Anglican Church of Canada, has a very unique way of understanding the position of faith and politics. And George Grant, Stephen Leacock, and others embody that in the red Tory perspective, which is quite different than what Philip Blond is doing in England.